Good morning and welcome to Motivational Mornings, the podcast that gets you going before you get going.
Good morning and welcome to Motivational Mornings. Now, my name is Ryan, and as always, I'm here today with my co host Vivi. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the book Knows Rules, Rules. And it's about Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention by Reed Hastings and Erin Meyer. Now, this was an interesting read, and it was all about Netflix's culture. And it really revolves around what they call freedom and responsibility, or F&R for short. So CEO Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, and the company believe that employees should have the freedom to make important decisions on behalf of the company. And now, I found this philosophy really interesting, as I'm sure you know. This is quite different than a traditional company. At a traditional company, if you're making a big decision, you need to get approval from your boss. And then if it's a really big decision, they might need to get approval from their boss. But Reed Hastings argues that the issue with this approach is, well, one, this process takes time. And two, sometimes the person on the ground who specializes in the specific issue might have better information to make a better decision than the person who is dealing with a lot of different areas at once, which the boss often is. So I'll give an example of how this works. A few years ago, Netflix was attempting to buy the film rights to the documentary Icarus, which is a really interesting documentary, by the way, if you haven't seen it. It's about cycling and the Russian doping scandal. So now Adam, an employee at Netflix, was attempting to buy the film rights. And initially he bid $2.5 million to buy this film or to get the film rights. But it was in high demand. So like Amazon, Hulu, HBO, they're also bidding on the film. So he had to increase his price. But how high should he go? He already bid $2.5 million without getting any permission from his boss, without asking anyone. And now he's getting a little nervous because he had to go higher. And this was a lot of money. Should he bid $3.5 million, $4 million? Or would that be overpaying and not really good use of the corporate funds? Like, would he get in trouble? Because at this point in time, no documentary had gone for this much money. So what did he do? He asked his boss. He's like, am I allowed to do this? Should I do this? And this is what his boss said. He said, it doesn't matter what I think. You're the documentary guy, not me. We pay you to make these decisions. But ask yourself if it's the one. Is this going to be a massive hit? Is it going to be an Oscar nominee like Super Size Me or Inconvenient Truth? If it's not, then that's too much to pay. But if it is the one, you should pay whatever it's going to take. $4.5 million, $5 million. If it's the one, get the movie. So you can see from this example that the employee is the one that makes the decision. And I mean, $4.5 million is a lot of money. But the boss doesn't leave him hanging. So the boss's job in Netflix's corporate culture is to provide context on what the company wants to do in order for an employee to make a better decision. So all the boss is saying is, hey, the company is willing to pay a lot of money if it's a high quality documentary. Now it's your job to figure out what that means. So end of the story, Adam ended up bidding $4.6 million for the film. Netflix got it, and Icarus, the film, ended up winning Best Documentary at the Oscars in 2018.
I think that is an excellent transition to Ryan into more on the principles of what Netflix used in terms of hiring principles and how they did it and how they hired people, how they paid people. And just like most tech industries, I feel like Netflix does try to innovate, but they do so more so than other companies. For example, when hiring a creative role or an innovative role, Netflix feels that if that employee is 10 times more productive than the average one, well, then that employee should receive 10 times the salary as an average employee. So they really look at, for example, Netflix obviously hires a lot of engineers, a lot of engineers with software engineers and etc. And they employ that principle very, 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 very thoroughly because they realize that when an average engineer does an amount of stuff and they can get X amount of work done in 8 hours, well, extraordinary one can get 10 times that amount of work done in 8 hours. So why should the average person get paid as just the extraordinary one, where you can hire 10 times as less people and pay that one person that 10 times more salary, and then there will be that rock star principle. There'll be that rock star in your company and portray the quote-unquote rock star principle that Netflix has, talking about salaries, and then be a lot more productive and stay around with the company in result. However, when it comes to hiring, it's not just like, hey, pay everyone as much as they can. They have a very specific way on how they do that. So the way they do that is for any type of operational role where there is a clear cap in how good the employee can be paid, Netflix pays the middle market rate. So they look at the market rate and they pay right in the middle because it's an operational role and you can only go from, for example, from 0 to 10, and you can't go with more than 10 because you're doing operational things. But when it comes for creative jobs, Netflix pays creative employees at the top, absolute top of their market rate, which they say results in a lean workforce ready to take on much larger companies because of the quality of that workforce. This kind of relates on their talent density principle, meaning that when talented people work together, they each make themselves more productive. Whereas if you had less talented people around a similar goal, then they would be way less productive because they're less pushing and they're less wanting to compete. So the goal, Netflix says, should be to gather as much talent density as possible within a company in the early stages if that company wants a chance at succeeding. So that's an important thing for maybe you entrepreneurs to realize, that when you're getting started off, hiring is absolutely one of the most important things, specifically because you want to make sure that those hires off the front end are very, very talent dense if need be in your specific workplace. Netflix also has this premise along that note where for top employees, the joy that they get from working with top people in their industry is much higher than having them work in a fancy office with fancy office chairs and all-you-can-eat buffets. He says that stuff is great, but the Googles and the Facebooks and the Netflixes even, they do that just because mostly everybody else is doing that, but that's not what actually keeps the employees around. He said the best employees get the joy of their job by having other smart and intelligent people around them, and then fostering very good relationships around those smart, intelligent people and working together to solve creative problems and creative processes. However, when and if the employees who you hire turn out not to be the people that you wanted them to be, then at the flip end, Netflix is very, very quick to also fire. Because if you want to be at the best company, you have to continuously be evaluated as if you are actually the best. And then if you are not, that's just how it is. You have to move on to a company that's not willing to sacrifice those morals. Therefore, also, if an employee abuses trust at Netflix, then what they really do is take that employee immediately away from the company. For example, Netflix had this policy where you couldn't fly business class if, for example, you weren't traveling a long distance or when it wasn't a red eye. And if you had done that, and if you had been told about that and you knew that, then the company would just fire you regardless if you're the top employee at all, because that trust that they garner, that they give you as an employee, as that trust that in being able to make your own decisions has to be the most important thing that they put up on the pedestal, because that creates that really, really open transparency within the company. And if you don't have that transparency in this whole model of having the best people work there and stay there, really doesn't work. Now, on the note of hiring and firing and etc. and company culture, Netflix's company culture is obviously very, very different than most companies. Now, You might think that Netflix sees their employees as family, just based on what we're talked about, but in reality, they don't. Netflix does not perpetrate that whole family vibe that employees are like a family, because families have to accept each other no matter what wrongdoing they do. They also have been forgiven continuously if they're dragging their own ass, for example, and bringing everyone down from their own efforts. Therefore, Netflix argues that culture should be seen as a professional sports team, because professional sports teams gel together, work together, and pick up the slack where other people's are leaving off. However, all the players are very, very aware on a professional sports team that at any moment, any of them are replaceable and they can get continuously swapped in and out because the end goal of that team is to win. And that's what Netflix's end goal is, to dominate in this space that they're in.
With all this high talent density, you're then able to eliminate controls that most companies would have in order to give your highly talented employees the freedom to make better decisions. So one of the first controls that Netflix got rid of was its vacation policy. And it went from a traditional specified amount of vacation, so you say you get 3-4 weeks off a year, to unlimited vacation. So you get as much vacation as you want. You don't need to ask permission. You just take it and go. They trust you that you'll make the right decisions. So now, this seems kind of crazy. And at first, it didn't actually work. What they found was that people were actually taking less vacation. People were getting more stressed because there wasn't a minimum amount of vacation they needed to take. So what they found is, for example, if you work somewhere and you're given 3 weeks of vacation a year, if you don't take it, you lose it. So you're going to take it before the end of the year. Whereas if you're given unlimited vacation, you're not really losing anything if you don't take it. So how did Netflix fix this? Well, they had to set context again. They had to lead by example. So what the top management did is they actually forced their leaders to take more vacation and be more vocal about it. So they would take 4 or 5 weeks off and they would go to these remote places and they would come back and they would share with their employees pictures and experiences of the vacation to show that, hey, you know what? We are taking advantage of this unlimited vacation. And since the leadership is taking advantage of it, you guys should too. Another thing they had to do was they had to provide feedback and the reason why this would and wouldn't work. Because what they also found is, hey, someone takes vacation at the busiest time of the year when you need, say, all 5 engineers to be there from their department. If 2 of them leave, well, you're not going to get it done in time. So they also had to be responsible, since they are making their own decisions, to say, hey, you know what? This isn't maybe the most appropriate time to take my vacation during the busiest time of the year. Maybe I will take it, I don't know, and say in the summer instead. And so now Netflix still uses this policy, and it works now. But the reason is it comes back to that high talent density. These employees are able to make good decisions about when to use their unlimited vacation policy because of their high talent and because of their responsible employees. And so now the advantage of that is the employees get the freedom and flexibility to work the way they want, and in turn they turn out a better product. Now, that wraps up today's episode of Motivational Mornings. Thanks for listening, and if you guys want to check this book out on Audible, you can get a free 30-day trial of Audible at audibletrial.com/motivational mornings. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.